Hello friends, my name is Karthik. I am a TSC here at Hortonworks. So today we would be discussing about why to use Beeline over HiveCLI when you have a Ranger authorization enabled. So that is, you have Ranger deployed in your environment, and it is always recommended to use Beeline over the HiveCLI. So you might have read, or you might have someone might have said to you that the policies which you deploy in Ranger, it doesn't applies for the Hive CLI. So any policy which you define in Ranger, such as deny or allow policy, uh, the Hive CLI would simply try and bypass it, right? So we will try to see that in a more practical approach today, right? So let's start. So let me just show you my cluster first. So this is my cluster. So currently it's a 3 node cluster, so I do have the Ranger as well as the Hive service in place, right? And for the demo, we would be using the user Roger. So Roger is a user who has been created in the KDC. So I also have a Kerberos in place. So for authentication, I'm using the Kerberos, and for authorization, as you know, it's the Ranger which is in place, right? So let's just have a look into the default policies which I have in Ranger. So we are talking about two policies over here. So one is the HDFS and another one is the Hive policy, right? So currently in HDFS, I don't have any policy set for the user Roger, right? And let's go back to the Hive policy. So even under Hive, as you can see, there is nothing associated policy with the user Roger, right? So what would happen when you don't have any policy defined uh, for any user, and that particular user tries to access something, some table or some database in Hive CLI and in Beeline? Let's try and have a look into it. Okay, so I'm just going back to the terminal. So here, as you can see, I have just did a small k list. You can see the user principal is Roger. So whatever request goes from this particular node to any service, it would be as the user Roger, right? So I have just started a Hive session over here. You can see this. So this is actually as the user Roger over here, right? Let's just go to the another terminal. So it is the same node, just doing a k list to see what's the user principal. Okay, so it's Adam over here, but let's do a k-init for Roger. Okay, so I have the default principal in place, Roger. So let's evoke a Beeline session. This is the zookeeper JDBC string which I am using. So you can just get this from the Ambari, or else you can also directly connect to the Hive server to host, right? So if you just go to Hive configs in Ambari, you should be having the JDBC string over here. So this is the JDBC string. If you just click on this notepad symbol, it would just copy the JDBC string. So let's go back to the terminal. Okay, so I have basically two terminal over here, in which one I have connected to the Hive, and then the other one we are connected to the Beeline, right? Okay, so now, as you know, there is no current policy which is set for the user Roger, right? So I do have a database created name cards. So let's try to select it. So I'm just trying to use this command. So it's use cards. As you can see, I am getting an authorization error over here. So it clearly says the user Roger doesn't have use privileges over the database cards, right? Let's try the same in HiveCLI. Oh, sorry. I'm actually able to use the database cards over here. I can even query what's inside it. So all these details, all this data is coming from the metastore directory, which is the warehouse directory, which is /apps/hive/warehouse, right? Which is an HDFS location, correct? So you can see clearly the Hive bypasses the ranger authorizations over here. So how does it gets the access, right? So basically in HDFS for the directory /app/hive/warehouse, the user Roger would be having the access to it, right? So let's just have a look into the HDFS level permissions. So this is another node. I am currently logged in as the user HDFS over here. I do have the needed principal. Let's do an ls. So as you can see under warehouse, I have like cards.db and the other databases. So .db is for database. So whatever database you create, you would be having the associated .db file over here, right? So as you can see, it's currently set to full permission. So this is where the ranger policies which you set, right? So that's how it is. So what happens if I just go ahead and mask this particular directory's permission, right? Let's try that then. So just to show you, we will also just check what is inside this. So sorry. So under cards.db, I have like three tables currently: categories, deck of cards, and deck of cards underscore large, right? So let's try and revoke the permission for this. So let's run. So I'm setting for the cards.db. So all the tables inside it shouldn't be having the permission. So as you can see, the cards.db currently has no permission even in the HDFS ACLs, right? So let's try with HiveCLI once again. So as you can see now, it's actually throwing the error, right? After revoking the permission from the HDFS level. So I can't even use. So as you can see, right? So just a moment ago, I was able to do this command. It was running when I am trying to use cards. It was actually working. The reason why it was working, as you know, it's because of the HDFS level permissions which was set to full, right? I mean, in HDFS, we saw the permission was for the complete directory structure. It was a 777 permission. That's the reason why it was working. So what happens if I now go ahead and define a ranger policy, right? So in Beeline, as we already know, this Beeline, it's actually a client tool Java tool which would connect to your Hive server too, right? And the other Hive CLI, which doesn't connect to Hive server too, but it connects to the Hive meta store directly to the warehouse, right? It directly calls the HDFS. So let's try and set a permission now. Let's define a permission. Let's see. So let's go back to the Ranger admin UI. So I'm defining a HDFS policy right now. So I am not defining any high policy for now. So let's try with the HDFS policy first. So this is the warehouse directory. So probably I'll just edit it and would add the user Roger, as we are working with the user Roger now. So it is set to recursive. So whatever is inside warehouse directory would have permission for the user Roger over here. So that's what this policy says. So let's save it. So to sync, it maximum takes like 30 seconds. So let's just wait for a couple of seconds. So I'm back to the Hive CLI now. Let's see what happens. As you can see, now I'm able to use the database cards even though I don't have the HDFS level permissions, right? So can we conclude it is actually uh, accessing the Ranger policies? I mean, so the Ranger policy does get seems to be getting applied to Hive CLI, right? Can we conclude that? So not totally, because Hive CLI we have now just checked for the HDFS level policies, right? We haven't yet defined any Hive policies. So previously we were getting this permission error in Hive CLI, but now we aren't. So HDFS level policies in the Ranger seems to be applying for the Hive CLI in this particular case. And let's just have a look into the Beeline as well. Still the same. So this is because we have an HDFS level policy. The Hive server 2, as it is connected to the Beeline, it is still not taking it, right? So let's now try and define a policy in Ranger. Let's go back to the Ranger admin UI. So this is a okay, probably we could just put it star over here, so which means this policy would allow access for all the database, all the tables, and all the columns for all the tables, right? We don't see our user address over here, so we'll just add Roger. Okay, so there seems to be an existing policy. That's the reason why it threw error. Maybe we can just cut short it to some other database, probably just cards. Let me just have a look what all databases we have. So we have a database as Nader. Probably you can just define that as well. So it has been saved. Let's just have a look into the policy. So this policy says, so the user Nader and the Roger has access to the database cards and the database Nader and all the table which includes in this both the databases along with all the columns, right? So I think we waited for some time, so let's just try it out. Just before we go ahead with the Beeline, I just wanted to show you in HiveCLI. So we were already able to use the cards, right? So you can see I can even use the database's test knocks, right? So this particular database is also not defined anywhere in ranger policies, correct? Not in the the Hive policies which we saw earlier, right? We only defined one policy for in HDFS, that is the warehouse directory, the slash app slash hive slash warehouse. Let me just show you. So initially, if you remember, we just did one change over here, that is the warehouse directory. We just added the user Roger, giving it full access to the Hive warehouse directory. Right, so whatever comes under a warehouse, right? So it is currently set to recursive. So anything which comes under a warehouse. So in our case, under warehouse, we have the different .db files, which are nothing but the databases, under which we have the columns, right? So just giving the HDFS level permission alone, uh, we can have full access to the Hive CLI, but that's not the same in Beeline, right? Even if we give the full access to the warehouse directory in Beeline, you still need to define the Hive policies. That's the reason why we went to the Hive policy and we included the two databases, the Nader and the cards databases, right? So this is the reason why Beeline is actually being recommended to use, correct? So let's try now. Let's see if it works in Beeline this time. So as you can see, when I do a show databases, I can only see cards and Nader. So we do know that we also have other databases existing. For example, the test Knox, right? It also is present. So these are the databases which exist, but in Beeline, it only shows the database for which I have access to. So if you remember, we did a KNet using the user Roger, right? So this entire session, it would be accessed as the user Roger. So in ranger policies, I have defined policy for the user Roger, to have access only for these two databases. That's the reason I'm only able to view these two things. Deny policy for any particular databases. Let's see how that would work. So just to show you, we can just try and use cards. I'm able to. If I do a show data table, I'm able to just view the tables inside the database cards. It's just all working. So what if I try to deny a certain table? So let's try and edit this. So probably if I just so this is how you write a deny policy. I mean, you just excluding this particular databases. So my Ambari is not latest. So probably if you have a latest HTTP and a Ambari version, so you would be getting a different section over here below the allow condition where you could actually define the deny condition for any policy in a much more easier and a better way, right? So for now, what I'm basically doing here is I'm just trying to revoke the access for this particular databases, the cards database, uh, for these two users, all right? So let's see. So let's go back to Beeline. So just try to do a show databases again. As you can see, I don't see the database cards over here at all because that is a denied condition which has been defined currently, as you can see. Even if I do a use cards, I would get an exception where it says the user Roger doesn't has the use privileges for the database cards, right? The same thing in HiveCLI, it works fine. So what can we conclude out of this session? Does it mean HiveCLI does follows the Ranger policies? Yes, but only the HDFS policies, not the Hive policies, which we set in Ranger. So in real-time environment, if you see, if I was the user Roger, then I could simply bypass the policies, right? So as you as a Hadoop admin might have defined a policy for me saying, okay, Roger shouldn't have the access to the database cards, but I could simply bypass that policy by simply entering into the Hive CLI and making any unwanted change to that particular database, right? So this can cause a serious security breach. So for this not to happen, usually you as a user might want to revoke the complete access for Hive CLI. You would simply revoke the access for all your users, not to use Hive strictly, especially when Ranger is been deployed, right? Beeline on in the other hand, no matter whatever masking you set in your HDFS level permissions, either if you have a full permission in your HDFS file level, it doesn't matter. It would only contact the ranger and it would just check what policy is defined for you in your Hive as well as in your HDFS in the ranger, right? Accordingly, it will actually authorize you. So that's why it is strictly asked to use Beeline alone when you uh, try to access any or database or try to run any queries in Hive. Uh, Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video.